In this video, I'm going to help you to understand what it takes to pass Googleyness interviews, behavioral interviews with Google. And I'm going to have 5 topics I'm going to touch upon here. First topic would be, if you go in half prepared for a behavioral interview, it's worse than not preparing at all that job interview, simply because unless you feel like you get confidence from preparing a behavioral interview, it will play on your morale and this will show in your job interview. When you compare that with someone who hasn't prepared, who maybe doesn't believe in job interviews, but still is really pumped up and confident in their interviewing skills, that's why they might have the edge on someone who's going in half prepared. Or if you want to take it the other way around, vast majority of candidates underestimate what it takes to prepare behavioral interviews. Okay. Second point I want to talk about here is in a behavioral interview, you should sell yourself as the best candidate versus selling yourself as being able to fit into someone else's culture or into some other types of templates. Simplest example would be the STAR format. It's of course great advice to structure your answers in the STAR format, but that won't get you past that job interview. So if you really want to get good with these things, you should also consider getting one step further, such as to dramatize your answers, or even consider taking your answers to the next level, not just in the STAR format, and that's it. Or if you want another example here of how you sell yourself, which is slightly counterintuitive, is a good advice is to introduce metrics in your answers, but to the extent they are to your advantage. Okay, so if you watched Apple's iPhone 16 event, they said they made the phone batteries larger, okay, but they never mentioned the impact, they never quantified the impact that it had on iPhone's battery life, right? Simply because that wasn't a feature, right? So even if it's good advice to, hey, be upfront with people and try to quantify your achievements, it's only when it's to your advantage, right? Number 3 problem you want to avoid in behavioral interviews is that most people have vague answers. And the definition of behavioral interview is that when they look at your past experiences, so they can predict your future performance on the job, right? Or if I may, just a quick example of how a question can be reframed so counterintuitively that you won't know how to answer it. Tell me about the time when you managed your time efficiently. Okay, so a time when you manage your time efficiently, it's a straightforward question. You know that you have to give them a specific time of when you achieve this successfully, of course. Right now, what if we alter that question into something on the lines of, how do you manage your time? Okay, so it's an open-ended question, and in my experience, around 75% of candidates would essentially talk about how they would manage their time and never actually get to a specific enough example, right? Which would not score you the best point, won't put you in on the line as the best candidate here, right? And the third iteration of the same question is, how would you manage your time? Okay, so it's open-ended and hypothetical, right? And I know there's a tradition with Google to encourage you to ask many follow-up and to really query them with as many qualifying questions as you want. But my point is that your end goal would be to talk about a specific time that would sell yourself as the best candidate with time management skills, right? So then what's the best approach here to answer these questions? Well, the best approach is, you could ask qualifying questions if you want. You could introduce an introduction if you want of how would you go with these things, but you should also focus primarily on specific examples of a time when you manage your time efficiently, and ideally 3 of them if you can, right? If you're a great communicator and you have no problem finding these types of examples. Okay. Number 4, listening skills, and this might sound counterintuitive to some. On its most basic form, this actually means to understand the question you're getting asked, because many people don't understand these questions. But what I really do mean by this is to understand why they ask you these specific questions. And for reference, it took me 1 year of full-time coaching behavioral interviews to understand what listening skills actually is all about. So it's something that's not straightforward for most. Okay, if you want a simple example, if you'd ask a senior PM in a Googleyness interview, how would you handle conflict with a peer? Okay, and they would say something online, say, hey, I always handle conflict, by focusing on the data, finding, something that I could quantify something, that I can prove my point, and so on. And then what some candidates, not let's say not most, would say that, hey, but the other guy was really not that good, or the working environment was bad, we weren't, getting along too well, and all sort of this stuff. Now, if you go back to the question, how would you handle conflict with a peer? The reason why someone would ask you this is not just because they want to see your data-driven approach to handle conflict, but rather to see your interpersonal skills. Whereas when some candidates, and a good number, unfortunately, of candidates, put the blame on others or on the company, or are having a slightly pessimistic approach, this is how it basically breaks your performance, because you didn't understand why the question got asked in the first place. So this is why people with great listening skills are far more likely to pass the interviews, even when compared to others who really prepared for the occasion, right? And 5, last but definitely not least, is something what I call the AI overdose. What do I mean by this? It's simply people are using various techniques, AI, in different use cases which do not work. Most common of them is rewarding your answers using AI. It doesn't work, okay? I made other videos about that. I won't insist on that. There's another trend of asking AI for feedback on your answers, which from experience you would expect this. You would be blown away what type of feedback AI provides you at first. But the problem is that it will get you, it will hook you into an AI feedback system, AI feedback loop, which together with rewarding your answers, think about like this: you reward your answer using AI, then you ask AI for feedback, and then you go all over again, you spin like that, and you could spend hours like this and basically skip preparing your job interview altogether. So there you go. This was the 5 topics I want to talk about here to help you pass Googleyness interviews. Hopefully you found this interesting, and thank you very much for watching.